You are listening to Lifeboat for the White Coat podcast.
Welcome to Lifeboat for the White Coat podcast, episode number 7, where we are talking with Dr. Paul Thomas from Plum Health in Detroit, Michigan, and around Michigan. This is going to be a very exciting conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. We certainly appreciate your time. We know you're a busy man, and I'd just like to kick this off, and we'd love to hear your story. I've had a chance to know Paul now for maybe a year or so, and we met, I think the first time maybe was Orlando when we were both speaking last year, if I recall, or at least cross paths. And then when I spoke, actually we both spoke over in Troy recently this spring, then I had the chance to hear Paul again. And Paul showed me great hospitality coming from Wisconsin, even a Packer fan, imagine that, to the Detroit area, took me out for a bite to eat, and just a very kind man. And one of the things that stands out about Dr. Thomas is that he has a real heart for people and a real heart for his community. And I think we'll talk about some of the things, how he's impacting his own community and the state, and all the good things he's doing. So welcome to the podcast, Paul, and let's kick it off. And maybe if you could give us some background just about your story. I mean, a big part of this podcast is just each doctor has his or her own story, and especially those that have been courageous like yourself to go independent.
Yeah, so thanks so much for the kind introduction. Again, Dr. Paul Thomas with Plum Health. And I started Plum Health because I believe that healthcare should be affordable and accessible for everyone. And we started by charging $10 a month for kids and $50 for adults in Southwest Detroit, just in the shadow of the old Michigan Central Station, which is an iconic landmark here in Metro Detroit. And I really grew my practice over 2.5 years to about 575 patients. And then I hired Dr. Raquel Orlick, who joined our practice, and together we built out a larger office in Corktown on the old Tiger Stadium site, the iconic Michigan and Trumbull. So if you've ever been to a Tigers game, you know where that is. Everybody in Michigan knows where Tiger Stadium is. And we grew to a third doctor, and we continue to serve people in our community with really affordable, accessible care. We changed up our pricing over time and raised our prices a bit. And then we had this opportunity to take care of more people across the state. So now we have 5 clinics, and we have 22, 23 people on staff, and we take care of close to 4,000 patients across the state of Michigan.
That's awesome. If I understand now, I've met a couple others, but it seems to be more of a rare path that many of the stories, right? The doctors come out of residency and then they go into the hospital systems. They talk about things like golden handcuffs. They talk about debt from their schooling. And your path was a little different. Could you maybe share that?
Sure. Yeah, I started my direct primary care practice directly out of residency. I didn't have any business training. So right after graduating, I took 2 8-week business courses. They're like crash courses on how to start a business. Detroit has this amazing entrepreneurial ecosystem, places like the Build Institute and Techtown Detroit, and even some of the larger institutions like Wayne State, and so forth. And there's also grant programs. So I wrote a grant to the Motor City Match program. I got $50,000. I got a pitch competition with Dan Gilbert's company, Quicken Loans, Rocket Mortgage. I won $50,000 there, pitching my company. But coming right out of residency, I took 2 really small business focused incubators to learn about legal, accounting, branding and marketing, social media content, etc. And they covered a new topic each week. I took all those skills and I used those to launch my business. And during residency, I wrote my own curriculum in my 3rd year, and I gave it to my residency director. I said, I want to do a direct primary care rotation, and here's everything that this will meet educationally. I read a bunch of books. I drove out to Kansas. I drove out to Denver. I visited with Dr. Umber. I visited with Dr. Clint Flanagan, and I took the best of what they were doing to build my practice. They also read my business plan and said, oh, this looks good, or you might want to change this, and so on. But it was all things that helped me grow straight out of residency into a direct primary care role. Also during residency, I was moonlighting. As soon as I was eligible, I didn't come from a ton of money. I had $170,000 in student loan debt, just like the average graduate in 2013. And then I paid some of that down during residency, but I was able to pay the rest of it off moonlighting and then working at Plum Health, starting my own company. So I was moonlighting for the first year and a half out of residency, my first year of running Plum Health. So I was working in urgent care on Thursdays and Saturdays. So 12-hour shift on Thursday where I'd see about 55 patients in a day. And then 8-hour shift on Saturday where I'd see about 35, 38 patients. They wanted us to see about 4 patients an hour, like 3.5 patients an hour. And that was like a great jet fuel, a reminder of like, oh, this is exactly what I don't want to do for the rest of my life. And I'm going to put all my time, effort, energy into building Plum Health. And so, living within my means, working in urgent care allowed me to pay off my student debt and live comfortably in Michigan and create a future with Plum Health.
Many of the doctors listening to this, and we hear a lot of stories as well where doctors are learners, right? I mean, if you can make it through medical school, you can do just about anything. But we hear that they go out and they listen to every podcast available. Now, there's a lot more available than there was 5 or 10 years ago.
For sure.
Could you talk about, like the doctor, say, who's considering starting a DPC or an independent practice, maybe even in specialty, right? But you start out with 0 patients. And
Yep.
So when you need patients to keep going and to thrive, you're especially good at marketing, which you mentioned you had some training, but I mean, you kind of stand out to me in terms of genuine type things too, right? Being active in the community. Could you talk about how you started your practice and you went from nothing to where you are at 5 clinics today?
Sure. Yeah. So you have a business when you have your first customer. And so I was in one of these entrepreneurial groups, and one of the ladies in the group called me one night and was like, I'm having a UTI. And so I asked her to sign up and sign some paperwork. And, I made a house call to her home. It's just like, this is the thing that you do to get started. I had nothing. I had a doctor's bag, a blood pressure cuff, vital signs, some lab supplies. I ordered some simple medications. My very first patient was a guy who ran out of his Lexapro, essentially. And so I ordered that from Andameds. It came the next day. I made a house call, did his vital signs, did a physical exam. We went through the Beck's depression inventory and the Hamilton anxiety scale, refilled his medications as appropriate. And that was my very first customer. And then I was doing house calls for like 2 months, November and December, until I signed a lease with a old police precinct that became a school for digital technology. So I had this one room. It was like 16 by 18, 16 by 20. And I saw patients out of that room. I bought an exam table, bought an EKG machine for like $1,600, bought a PFT machine for $800, ordered meds as my patients needed them. And within like the first couple months, I had, 35, 40 patients. And then at the end of the year, I think I had like 125, 150 patients. And then it really grew from there. And I ended up, after 2.5 years, having like 575 patients or so. And that's when I was in the position to hire Dr. Orlick. Then we leased the exam room over adjacent to the one I had, or, just like, it was technically a interrogation room. I had a guy who worked for the FBI who became my patient in the community. And he's like, hey, doc, I don't know if you know this, but this used to be the interrogation room. So it's kind of funny, ironic. I had another gentleman from the neighborhood who is a prominent bar owner, just like a really cool entrepreneur. He came in to use the service. He walked me over to the jail cell area of the police precinct where I was practicing. He said, hey, doc, that's my cell. When I was 19, I got this like drunken disorderly conduct. They threw me in the drunk tank for the night. And it's so nice to see that this place is now a place of healing and not a place of like, punishment or whatever. And it was a cool spot. There were people who were building businesses and they were teaching classes around like search engine optimization and drone technology. It's a school for digital technology. It came with free Wi-Fi and a free printer and scanner. So it's like kind of nice perks. The downside was like the bathroom was all the way down the hall. So you had to walk like all the way down this long corridor to get to the bathroom. There's only one bathroom, 2 bathrooms, men and women on the first floor. So it was like not a great long-term solution, but it certainly got the job done. In business, you call that a minimum viable product, right? What's your minimum viable product to get this done? Mm-hmm. And for a doctor, it's your brain, your stethoscope, and a laptop. And you can do a lot with those 3 items. And then the rest is just not window dressing, but like it's incrementally helping you become a more robust service. You don't have to have everything to start, but you do have to have something. And then as you grow your practice, you're adding different items to help more patients, different medications, EKG machine, maybe a caliper to do body fat analyses, just like simple things that you're going to add to your arsenal. We call this like building the plane as you take off. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's the best way to start. And so I talk to a lot of doctors who have this analysis paralysis where they're reading every book, listening to every podcast, going to every course and seminar, but it's like, when are you going to start? And for me, fortunately, somebody called me and was like, hey, I signed up on your website and I ran out of my Lexapro. Is this a real thing? And I said, yeah, it's a real thing. Let me quickly order this medication for you and I'll see you tomorrow. What's your address? And that was the impetus to get me, into action. But for entrepreneurs or doctors who want to be doing this, you have to take action.
You are listening to Lifeboat for the White Coat podcast.
I always say too that running a business or practice is action with that fine balance of like intuition and instinct. You need both. So when you get into that analysis side, it can kind of keep you stuck a little bit. So great
Indeed.
Points there. When you really started to see that lift in your patient population, what was your aha moment? When did you realize, wow, I've really got something and this is where I want to go?
I really have something, no, the work is never done, right? I don't think I've ever sat back and been like, I made it. I think I've got this, maybe it's for better for worse, but I joke and I say I suffer from ambition. And so, I'm always feeling like there's more people to help. There's more people to serve. The statistic is that there's roughly 100 primary care doctors in all of Detroit, and there's 600,000 residents. There's one primary care doctor for every 6,000 residents. If you go to Ann Arbor, there's one primary care doctor for every 600 residents. There's a 10x disparity between Detroit and Ann Arbor. And if you go north of 8 Mile into Oakland County, one of the wealthiest counties in America, there's one primary care doctor for every 600 residents. So there's, again, a 10x disparity between Detroit, where I work and practice, and the outlying suburbs. So the work's never done. And I've never had like oh man, I really made it, because there's so much to do and it's so compelling to keep chipping at this problem. We had the opportunity to pitch a school district up in the UP who's thinking about integrating direct primary care or Plum Health into their overall benefits package. And they're like, well, what about the doctors who already practice here? Aren't you going to be taking patients away from them? And it's like, no, we're not, because virtually all of the Upper Peninsula in Michigan is a health professional shortage area, just like much of Detroit, just like much of Michigan outside of any major metro like Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids and Metro Detroit. They're all health professional shortage areas. You need more doctors any way you can get them. And so I'm never satisfied, because I know that I'm completely surrounded by health professional shortage areas. And I really believe in the power of primary care to make an impact in reducing hospitalizations, reducing morbidity, mortality, giving people a better quality of life. So I'm never satisfied.
One thing we hear is connecting with larger companies, with a large employee population, school districts you mentioned. But can you tell us, or tell your audience, how do you find those opportunities? Where do you start? Do they reach out? Do you reach out?
Yeah. So I read a great book by Gary Vaynerchuk and his, it's called Crush It, right? Document, don't create. You don't create content, you just document what you do over and over and over again. For doctors, it may seem boring, but like, hey, I just gave somebody a flu shot. Hey, just saved somebody $20 on their omeprazole or Prilosec. Hey, just sewed up a laceration. Hey, just managed somebody's diabetes and their A1C is no longer 12, it's now 6. You know, those are great milestones. Oh, look at this blood pressure. It used to be 210 over 140. Now it's 140 over 90. Like we're making strides here. So I do that over and over and over again, ad nauseum, right? And you know, people on social media like know my formula. They know what like my posts look like because it just is so intuitive, like what I'm gonna say. And so somebody saw our social media stuff from a school district and reached out to us directly and asked us to bid out what's called a RFP, or request for proposal. They had 3 clinics that were being operated really poorly by an out-of-state, you know, multi-state company or national company. They're really unsatisfied with the care and service that their employees were getting. They have about 1,700 employees across these 3 clinical sites. They're very dissatisfied with the care. So we bid it out, we pitched them, we met with them like 6 times over the course of a few months. And ultimately they decided to go with a local doctor and his company that can provide great care and service without any, you know, with the great like reviews and all those intangibles that make our service great. And part of that, winning that bid, was having a great social media presence where I just document what I do every day.
One of the things that comes up a lot, it seems, I'm sure you've probably heard this, and I jokingly call it street cred, right? But credibility, because we're kind of veering away from I'm not sure why it's trusted, maybe because they carried trust decades ago, but from the big hospital systems that have these brands and the big insurance that have these brands that are trusted. And it feels like you're very active in terms of earning that street cred, that legitimate street cred, right? Everything from whether it be writing a book to write your own practice to being active in the community and helping others. Could you talk a little bit about that? Do you feel like when people look at your DPC, and once you're as far along now as you are, I'm sure it's easier, but did you go through that where people were kind of like, who are you and what are you doing and why should I trust you?
I didn't really receive that too often. Like I didn't get that much pushback. Yeah, I'm a family physician. I'm genuine. I'm supportive. I really care about people. I spend an hour with my new patients. And so we develop a trusting rapport. And the rest is kind of noise, right? Like I'm here to serve patients and take care of them. And now with a larger organization, my main focus is caring for and supporting our doctors and clinicians and staff to make sure that they have the tools at their disposal to carry out the work of spending an hour with their patients and delivering great care and service on their own terms that feels good for them as physicians. That's within their license and doesn't cause them moral injury and all those other things. So I think we have a strong mission, vision, and values, right? We believe that healthcare should be affordable, accessible, and excellent for everyone. That's our mission. We value time with patients, authenticity, building trust, saving people money on their meds, labs, and imaging services. Those are our core values. And then our vision is that everybody in the state of Michigan has access to direct primary care. It could be with us at Plum Health, or we just rise the tide so that more doctors decide to jump into this pool and start their own DPC practices. And people heard about it from us in the news or us somewhere else, or a friend who uses our service, or they got it because their company purchased it for them. And so we're really just trying to advance this movement. And so as long as we practice and work in alignment with our mission, vision, and values, we're going to have resounding success. And we want to stay true to those mission, vision, and values.
I want to get back to, one of your core missions is to save folks money. And, prior to us recording this, you had shared
in healthcare, saving people money in healthcare. What?
Yeah, I want you to
mean
share.
we're not gonna extract as much value as possible from every life on our coverage plans.
Ugh. I want you to bring up the school district again, and I want people to really hear the numbers from working with Paul and his organization and his clinics and his locations, what it does for a corporation, a company, a school district, when you actually have somebody that you can count on, that is affordable, and people actually like to go to the doctor. So why don't you share a little bit of the numbers of when you started working with them and where they're at now?
Yeah, so we work with a bunch of public school districts across the state of Michigan and some, many small companies. The best case scenario is that if a company moves from being fully insured with Blue Cross or United or Cigna, Aetna, to become self-funded, and you can self-fund through the same companies, right? But it just changes how you pay for the care you receive. And once you layer in a direct primary care service that doesn't bill or use your insurance, you can pull 90% of your claims out of the insurance pool, thereby lowering your renewal rates or sometimes decreasing your renewal rates. And so we did this with a group of 700 teachers and school workers and bus drivers at a large school district in mid-Michigan. They have about 700 employees. From 2023 to 2024, when we took over the contract in early 2024, we saved them $1.2 million in 2024 alone. And we did that by giving them great care and service. Same day, next day appointments are guaranteed. Texts, phone calls, emails are all answered promptly. So they had something like 1,800 visits that year at our clinic. And then they had something like 5,600 texts, phone calls, emails with our clinicians. And all those add up to a 2x return on investments. Every dollar they spent on the care and service, they got $2 back in savings, which is remarkable for them. And it's replicable across different industries, different organizations. It could be a school district, a municipality, a company. We can help anybody as long as they are willing to go on this journey with us.
And because of your unique vision and what you've been doing, you recently won an award. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we are an award-winning business. We've won a few different awards over the year, but recently I was named a D Business 30 in their 30s. It's for all of Metro Detroit. They said they had something like a few thousand applicants, and they picked 30 winners, 30 people in their 30s. So I just barely made it because I just turned 38. So yeah, I was joking with my wife. I was like, I only had 22 months left to win this thing, and I'm over the hill. But it's just kind of a nice thing. It's a nice validation. It doesn't change the day-to-day healthcare of our patients, but hopefully the recognition makes it into the broader awareness of our region, where more people hear about Plum Health and direct primary care and start to trust this model as a way to get excellent healthcare for their employees, their teammates, and lower the cost of their care.
No, you don't only just accept folks who are part of a corporation that you have an agreement with. You accept folks who are willing to just become a member of your locations. Is that correct? You don't decline anyone as long as they want to be a member.
Yeah, we call those folks retail members, people who are just walking off the street for themselves or their families. And that's how I built my entire business, taking care of people in the community in a health professional shortage area who didn't have access to a great doctor, who were willing to spend $50 a month to see an amazing doc. And so that's how I built it. And then one day, one of those people owned a restaurant, and he was like, "Hey doc, my chef just cut themselves. Can you sew it up?" And I was like, "Yep, let's get them signed up. We'll create a corporate account. We'll put your company's credit card on file, and we'll put that patient underneath that company. We'll bill them the $50 for today's laceration repair. And then I'll see him next week to take out the stitches. And then I'll have him come back next month, and we'll do all of his history and physical and make sure he doesn't have diabetes or high blood pressure and make sure he's healthy." And then I get a phone call. "Hey doc, one of our guys is vomiting. Okay, come in for a rapid flu test, and here's some Tamiflu," right? And then you start building up this roster of now 50 patients from that one restaurant. And then other restaurant owners hear about it through the Corktown Business Association or the Southeast Michigan Chamber of Commerce. And then word spreads and more restaurant owners or small business owners want to enroll their employees. And then you start to scale and service larger businesses that want to save money as a part of integrating this into their health benefits design by working with a forward-thinking broker or third-party administrator to handle downstream referrals and really get the most out of their healthcare dollar.
I loved how you just described exactly the steps that you took and how you took their credit card and how you made a corporate account. I mean, that's what these new doctors who are actually listening to our podcast here, that's what they need to hear. What did you do to be successful? That is a successful story, just from a small scale, but truly starting from, like you said, the minimal viable product and building from there. I love that. Thank you for explaining those steps.
Yeah. I'll take it one step further. Somebody calls your office. Hey, is this the direct primary care office in town? Yep. Do you want to sign up? Well, tell me more. Well, it's $85 a month and you get unlimited primary care. We save you 90% of your meds, labs, and imaging. We don't bill insurance at all. You don't bill insurance, you say? Like, well, yeah. Have you ever called a doctor's office and had the doctor answer the phone? No, I've never had that happen before. Okay, well, would you like this care and service for yourself and your family members? Yes, that would be amazing. Okay, let's get you signed up. What's your name, date of birth, phone number, email address, credit card number, and I can see you later today or I can see you tomorrow. What do you want? Okay, so like that's how you close somebody who's calling your office. And half of people that call will want to sign up when you frame it like that.
Yeah.
Okay?
And it's a paradigm shift from a mindset perspective because folks who have insurance, you try to avoid going to the doctor because you don't want to get that bill 2 months later, or
Indeed.
you don't want to pay the copay, right? Paradigm shift, you now have access to a doctor for whichever situation you have. You can text them. I mean, you mentioned it. The doctor we interviewed yesterday mentioned it. You can text me what you need. We can get you in right away. We can help you out, whatever the situation is. I mean, it is a literal paradigm shift in the United States from a mindset perspective. So thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome. Happy to do it.
You are listening to Lifeboat for the White Coat podcast.
Yeah, I would love, I'm in banking and finance, and I've worked with commercial businesses over the years, and it's no mystery that healthcare costs continue to go higher and higher for employers. I'm going to jump ahead and invite you back. And I think it would be very interesting if we did a podcast dedicated to talking to employers and really breaking it down into those simple methods and how easy it was for your restaurant owner, as the example, to get a hold of you for their employee, and how easy it was to get them taken care of, because these small businesses even need that access to care to keep their businesses moving operationally. So I'm going to jump ahead and invite you back.
I love that.
I think love that.
Just emphasizing that point, you want your employees to be present and working and thriving, right? And so if your employee cuts themselves, you don't want them sitting in an ER for 8 hours or 12 hours because it's a simple laceration. You want to have a great primary care doctor who can sew that thing up right away. Similarly, if somebody throws out their back and they don't have any paid time off left, you don't want them just showing up to the work floor and just standing around doing nothing because their back hurts. You want them to see a trusted primary care doctor that can help them out with some ibuprofen and a muscle relaxer and maybe a shot of steroid or a shot of Cortisol that day so that they can improve their healing journey. And then a referral to physical therapy, or maybe the doctor just shows them, hey, this is the muscle you pulled and this is exactly how to stretch it. Let's take 5 minutes and go through some stretching exercise here today in the office so I can demonstrate this. I did want to make a correction. For the Mid-Michigan School District that we take care of, they do have 700 employees. They had 3,170 visits with us over the course of 2024. So each person came in roughly 4.25 times, or 4.3 visits which is amazing. And we had 5,448 virtual interactions, text messages, phone calls, emails. So I wanted to make that correction to make sure that was accurate.
Last thing I'll mention, and this is why I get so passionate as well, is you mentioned, the employee having to wait in an emergency room for 8 hours or not getting the care that they need. So they maybe extend their illness and they're not able to contribute at work. The other thing that really is stressful for employees is the financial burden of getting that medical bill 2 months later or whatever it is. And they don't even know what they signed up for when they went to the doctor because they don't get the bill for weeks after. And then it is pretty, shocking. So this really does solve so many problems for many people.
I'll throw a stat out there. Nearly half of all Americans have $500 or less in savings, and 36% of Americans have $100 or less in savings. So if you give somebody health insurance with a $2,500 deductible, that sounds great, right? But half of your employees are not going to go seek care because they're scared about the balance bill. Okay, my primary care visit is covered and there's no bill for just a regular physical. But if once I say, oh, I've got this back pain, it gets flopped over to an acute visit and they code it differently. And then I get a $350 bill in the mail. Plus they want to do this x-ray, which is another $300. Plus they want to do some lab work, which is another $500. So at the end of it, I get a bill for $1,100 and I just don't have the money for that. So I'm not going to go at all.
Yeah, it's a great point. I want to piggyback on that too from the employer front. I mean, we see the avoidance of care, right? Which then illnesses get worse and things escalate. By the time you go, it's very expensive and the person's very sick. But I do want to make just a point about the employer partnerships with DPCs. Sometimes, and I think I can speak on this because I was an employer for 25 years and led a health plan transformation. One of the things that's very important to understand and to explain is that this isn't just a savings for the company. This is actually shared savings with the employees. I think that's come out in the discussion here, but I just want to shine a light on it because roughly 75, 25, 80, 20 of the cost are paid by employer or employee. So not only are they getting far better, more accessible care, but when you say a quote, we were saving, for instance, $1 million a year, you mentioned a school district saving over $1 million a year. That means employees and their families are saving hundreds of thousands of dollars and they're getting better care. So I just want to point that out. If there's any thoughts about this is a selfish employer thing and they're just trying to save money and cut their health care, it's actually the opposite. Costs go down, quality of care goes way up.
For sure. And you know the stats, but we're reducing urgent care visits by 60 to 70%. We're reducing ER visits by 40%, right? And so every time you walk into the ER, you can expect a bill for $2,000. And maybe the first one, you're definitely gonna have to pay for that first one because you're gonna be under your deductible amount. On average for that mid-Michigan school district with 700 employees, we saved $1,778 per employee, right? So that's either money that the employee didn't have to spend in healthcare costs or money that the school district now has to reinvest in, better infrastructure or giving people raises, or, if you're a business, you have money to spend on like a better break room or better amenities at your facility or a piece of equipment that can grow your business and service more customers so you can hire more people. It's a virtuous cycle when you pull money out of the insurance pool.
Yeah, we're seeing many referendums in Wisconsin and other states, and the reason for those, they don't always broadcast or maybe even fully understand it, but the reason for those referendums for tax increases are because of healthcare. And we have a couple of shining stories in Wisconsin where school districts took this path and we're expanding, building buildings and adding programs, and we're recruiting the best teachers. So lots of cool stories there. And Paul, I knew the time would fly, and so we're kind of there. But I do have a home run question that I always like to ask, and I would love your perspective on this because coming out of residency, you've got a little bit different angle than many of the docs that went into the system and realized that they couldn't do that their whole career. But for any of the residents listening or doctors listening that are frustrated in their current situation, or maybe what they see as upcoming after graduation, what would you tell them, just kind of heart to heart? What advice would you give them?
If you are smart enough to get into medical school and complete medical school, if you're gritty enough to complete your residency, and if you're compassionate enough to have chosen a primary care specialty, then you have all the ingredients that you need to start and grow and build a successful direct primary care practice. And you can augment that as you go by reading a bunch of business books, by going to conferences, by listening to podcasts like this, by picking up my book, Startup DPC, shameless plug. It's a great book that's helped thousands of doctors start and grow their own direct primary care practices. But all of that is just window dressing or just noise if you don't take action and start a practice. And like I said, you need a brain, a stethoscope, and a laptop. Most people have all three of those ingredients, and they can get out there and start serving patients, and then sublease a one-room office or one-room exam room from a dermatologist in your community, and don't violate Stark laws by referring all your patients to that dermatologist. You got to refer them to other dermatologists too. Or you can sublease a room from a co-working space like a WeWork or something similar in your community. Or you can find the cheapest piece of real estate and, buy it or renovate it. You can do this. It doesn't have to be a huge investment. A lot of doctors think, oh, I got to build $1 million practice. And it's like, no, you don't. You need a couple $100s for rent. You need an EMR. That's about $300 a month. You already got a stethoscope and a laptop. And then just buy the medications as the people need them, and contract with a lab company, and they'll bill you at the end of the month. And, buy some med malpractice insurance, which is about $400 a month. People are like, I can't do this because the med mal is so high. And it's like, no, it's not. That's what your employer is gaslighting you with. It's $400. It's $500 a month. You're going to be fine. You can buy it. You got the money for it. Trust me. And then get patients by going to community meetings, block clubs, Rotary clubs, small business associations, county business associations. Write a letter to your local state representative or mayor and have them come to your ribbon cutting. Invite the TV news crews in. You can do all this stuff because you're a doctor and you're smart enough.
Awesome answer. Love it. Love it. So Paul, if anyone is watching this and wants to reach out to you, what is the best way to do that?
You can call our office, Plum Health in Corktown, 313-444-5630. If I have a couple of minutes, I'll chat with you. If you want to learn how to grow your business, startupdpc.com is a website that I run. It has our book and some courses you can take to learn how to do this. And best of luck to you.
For those of you that are listening that are considering wanting to start your own independent practice, or maybe start by working with a current independent practice, there is a website called whitecoatlifeboat.com that lists all, and we're growing, available positions around the United States, in different states that are hiring. Not only doctors, but also the support roles for independent locations. So Paul, for when you are continuing to grow, make sure you utilize that as well. And we thank you so much for your time. And thank you everybody for listening to Lifeboat for the White Coat podcast. This concludes this episode of Lifeboat for the White Coat podcast. Please make sure you visit whitecoatlifeboat.com.